Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cloud Conversations. My name is Peter Rising. I am one of your hosts. I am joined by our newest co-host, the wonderful Femke Cornelissen from the Netherlands.
Wow.
Hey there, Femke. How are you today? Are you keeping well?
Yeah, I'm fine. Really excited for this new episode.
Excellent, excellent. And we have a wonderful guest with us who is looking very, very festive and cheery, as he always does. We have the wonderful Will Rowe with us. Hey, Will, welcome to Cloud Conversations. How have you been, my friend?
I've been really good. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for having me on this. And Femke, I can only apologise in advance for anything that I might say because we don't know each other yet.
No.
And there are times when sometimes I say too much, sometimes I say too little, but usually I'm insulting in some way. So I'm going to apologise now, get it out of the way, like my wife does whenever we go to a party. Just ignore Will, that sort of thing. So.
Good to know.
So, yes.
Good to know.
A disclaimer
Really nice.
in advance. This is good stuff, but
this is, yeah.
It is massively important. So, what I'd love for you to do, Will, is I know you very well. Femke doesn't know you that well yet. You just connected on LinkedIn. We were talking about before we started the show.
Yeah.
So, for Femke's benefit and for our wonderful audience, would you just give us a little introduction to who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into things a bit more deeply.
Of course. So I'm Will Rowe. I am the self-proclaimed UK's leading Microsoft recruitment consultant. And I run a company called MS Talent, and we're growing and we're placing people with Microsoft 365, Azure skills, project program management, sales. It's an exciting time. So that's me. And I do stuff on LinkedIn, and I do stuff in person in terms of sort of going to events and talking and that sort of thing. And I have an old lapsed podcast as well called Queering Out of Control, which Peter might remember from the time that he did it. So so that's me. And I'm here and I'm excited to be here. So thank you very much. So is my tinsel dinosaur as well.
Yeah.
So,
I see.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I can
Really
see
nice.
Mr. Dinosaur in the background there.
Yeah, he's literally right there with the whiskey.
Whiskey. I was thinking, what is that? But it's whiskey.
Yeah, 2 bottles of whiskey.
You need that?
Those are my. To be honest, I work in recruitment. If you're not drunk by 11, So yeah. By the way, just disclaimer: I'm definitely not drunk.
Great. Great. So I was checking out your LinkedIn profile, and what I'm seeing there is the tips at Christmas. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Will's 12 Tips at Christmas started out, I think, about 4 years ago. And I used to do a lot of video content on LinkedIn, like all the time. I think I was one of the first recruiters to start doing videos on LinkedIn and putting up jobs and talking about stuff. And that kind of evolved over a period of time into trying to give helpful advice. And it just then became something that at Christmas, you have the 12 days at Christmas. I thought, from a personal marketing perspective, people surely couldn't have had enough of me throughout the year. So why not just really hammer it home at Christmas? So Will's 12 Tips is frequently poorly thought out, off the cuff, doesn't really follow any structure because, from one day to the next, I'll forget what my plan was. But the idea is to give help and advice to people on kind of what I see in the industry, and it's aimed at helping job seekers get a better job more easily, and also aimed sort of less so at sort of hiring managers and helping them have a bit of a think about what they need to do to actually get access to people. So there's tips around, like so far this year there's been cover letters. What's the point? Kind of, don't bother with a cover letter, put it in your CV. There's been the state of the market, the fact that it is so fast out there at the moment in terms of people coming onto the market and getting jobs and coming off. And the idea behind this is just to have some fun. I don't take myself too seriously, and I certainly don't. I don't want people to be sort of sitting there bored. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea behind it, really.
Really nice. Really nice. Do you have some tips that you want to share? That you already published?
Well, I mean, the problem is if I start talking through all the tips now, then I'm kind of screwed for the rest of the 12 because it's difficult enough. Like after 4 years, it's difficult enough to come up with something new. Because
It
like
is.
I watch all you guys, creating content about the latest and greatest release and what to do and all this kind of stuff. Recruitment doesn't work like that. Recruitment is the same, and so it's difficult to come up with new stuff. And there's occasionally recycled tips in there.
Yeah.
But I think if I was going to give one tip, it would be figure out what it is that you want to do before you start looking for a job. Because if you don't know what it is that you want, you can't really figure out how to get there. And a lot of what I do is actually talking to people and helping them decide what is it that I want to do, and giving them advice on how to get there frequently.
Great.
So that's probably that's the only one you're going to drag out of me today, Femke. The rest of the time you're just going to have to watch. You have to watch.
I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna watch.
Absolutely. Hit subscribe. It'll be great.
Yeah,
Great.
I've been watching along and I've really been enjoying them so far, Will. And I have to ask, have you recovered from your pantomime experience? Because it sounded really quite traumatic.
So for the pandemic, I have been working from home and spending my time in a forest when I've not been working from home because I walk my spaniel, who's going to come in at some point and be an idiot. So I'm going to apologise for that in advance. And so coming back into sort of large social situations has been something of a challenge for me. And we've been to conferences, and we all met up at South Coast Summit, and so all that kind of stuff is I'm sort of gradually getting my head back into it. But I work on the assumption that grown-ups, if they're not well, aren't going to go to the summit. They're not going to go to a conference. They're not going to go to a meetup or a user group, because at the back of their mind, they're going to be sitting there going, well, I don't really want to make those other people sick. Maybe that's just a slightly naive view. But the sheer amount of horror of small children with sort of icicles hanging off the end of their noses, coughing and spluttering. It's behind you! Do you know what I mean? And it's oh my God. It was like, it was. I felt like I was walking into like a, just like a plague camp or something. It was awful. So I decided to sit very quietly. I'm not a fan of the panto anyway, Pete. It's all right, but I don't get really why people really, really enjoy going to it. But it's fine. I'm over it now. I don't believe I've contracted anything serious. My voice is a little croaky and scratchy, but that's just the time of year, I think.
It is.
So yeah,
it is.
Femke, is pantomime a big thing in the Netherlands? Is that something that you get into at all, or not? Or?
I really don't know. I don't know what it is, actually.
You don't know what the pantomime is?
No.
I did wonder.
Peter,
Do you want to explain it, Will?
Oh, so it's the pantomime is, and I'm just trying to think of the best way to explain this. It's theatre. You go to the theatre, and it's all of the sort of the the Grimm's fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
Fairy tales. So it's sort of fairy tales which have been turned into kid-friendly theatre, and there's lots of songs, and there's lots of silly stuff. It's very slapstick comedy. There's always a man dressed as a woman who's called the Dane, as opposed to a drag artist, and so like. At times it's quite funny, but the kids really get into it and they love it and they can shout. There's always a monster that comes on and there's like, it's behind you, and they turn around and they can't see it, and then they, yeah, exactly, and then that happens 3 times every time. It's always 3 times, and then at the end
there's
a happy ending. Yeah, it is all right. It's just as a grown up, it gets old really quick.
What is this?
It is very much for children, isn't it?
Why are we doing this?
For a 5-year-old, they're sitting there going, "My mind is blown. How on earth have they got a velociraptor on stage?" That was the one I went to just now. But it's you get to see sort of fairly famous celebrities in costume and doing things.
Oh,
so, yeah.
great. We have in the Netherlands, we have Sinterklaas. You heard of that?
Yeah,
No.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, Peter, you know what it is? Yeah. No,
I do.
it's not Santa Claus. It's
Well, it's similar, isn't it? I've heard of Sinterklaas because I have family in Rotterdam, so I've heard of it.
It is. It's the same, of course. It's in English, the word of, but it's a man looking like a little bit like the Christmas man and giving some presents to children, and then he goes away. That's before Christmas. It's really strange happening. Yeah. He comes with a boat and and then he goes away, and that's a sort of thing. Walking on the houses, giving presents, and all the children are, "Ooh, there is Santa Claus." What is this?
Nice. Yeah,
it's
that's
nice, but it's strange.
I can't see that happening in the UK unless someone's robbing stuff from under the tree and just literally going and giving it to the children. Sort of like a modern day Robin Hood. But at Christmas.
But it's a lot in December month for the children. But it's okay. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
What I was wondering, Will, what I was thinking about was, I think there is a lot of change in the recruitment world the last years. Can you tell something about what has changed? Because my feeling is that first you need to make you need to do a lot to get a job, and right now it looks like it's turning around, something like that. That you don't apply for a job, but you're gonna someone gonna ask you or something like that. There is a lot of change in that world. Is there something you can tell us about?
So it's been for the and I can predominantly speak for what's happening here in the UK as opposed to sort of broader, but I think these themes carry across Europe and into America as well. We've moved over the last 2.5 years from a market which was already fairly talent short. So we were sort of fairly skilled. There was a skills shortage generally in technology. The pandemic hit, and it seems to have, after a period of 3 or 4 months of it being very quiet, it seems to have just kind of exploded in terms of the demand for people in technology. And I think that's one, we're very, very fortunate to work in this industry, because if you look at other industries, I think they were hit significantly by the pandemic. You look at hospitality, manufacturing, technology hasn't suffered in the same way. And actually looking at where we are currently, with talk of recession here in the UK and concerns about next year, I'm not getting any hints of that, particularly from any of our customers, from MS Talent's customers. I think what this has meant is that we had a huge number of people move. It was the idea of the Great Resignation, which has been talked about a lot on LinkedIn. People were leaving because they might have been put on furlough here in the UK. They might have sort of come to the end of that and decided, actually, I don't want to stay working for this company. People might not have had access to sort of home working in the way that they wanted, and so that was often driving people to move. We're now seeing people continuing to kind of relocate away from the traditional centres of employment, so the cities and the southeast of here in the UK, the M4 corridor. We've got people comfortably moving because organisations are hiring nationally now as opposed to locally. And so again, that's driving salaries up, because if you can work from home or in a hybrid fashion and be 2, 3, 4 hours away from the office, well, why would we pay you more money to work in the southeast, for example, or in a city, when actually, you can work sort of slightly more sort of further out. But that in turn means that organisations that used to hire locally to those are having to up their salaries to get people, because those people are being hired as well. So it's all kind of there's a big mix, and what has then sort of driven that, to where your point is, which is where people are starting to get headhunted more. I think there's always been a fairly strong culture of being contacted through LinkedIn, for example. We've got this opportunity, the wrong opportunity frequently, but you get headhunted fairly often. But now it seems to be accelerating fairly significantly as well, because we are suffering a significant shortage of talent within the technology space. Salaries are increasing. I'd say salaries have increased by £20,000 to £25,000 here in the UK in the last couple of years. Demand has increased for people, and so when you're talent short and you've got lots of people moving, and there are still lots of people moving, I'm not sure how long it can go for before we reach a point where something's got to give, and I'm not sure quite what that's going to be, but there doesn't seem to be any sign of it slowing down yet, for which I'm massively grateful. But at the same time, there's a lot going on just generally within the tech hiring sector, and so I would say that's probably why you've started seeing, getting people contacting you more often, but also as well, it's, if you start doing more on LinkedIn, you raise your profile, your brand presence increases, and therefore suddenly you're more visible. And for a certain kind of organization that's perhaps more, interested in finding community-led people as well, then you're going to suddenly start getting more and more contacted. So
you say, when you have your LinkedIn profile up to date and share what your knowledge is, that can be really unique points.
It is, and I think it's a
more than ever.
It is. I think there tends to be two types of profiles on LinkedIn that we see. There's the ones who've got the bare minimum of information, and it's almost like someone has said, right, you need a LinkedIn profile, and they go, all right, and they put it on there. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, where people are using the LinkedIn platform in the way that it should be, which is as a brand marketing tool. It's like a micro marketing site for you. It's for you to sort of have your storefront of who you are, what you do, and then you can put out, like you say, sharing knowledge, references to blog postings, where you've been, what you've been doing, all the photos that Peter puts up of him with his mates, constantly, I'm here with her, and it's like, still hasn't got a photo with me. Nightmare.
Did we not get a photo with you? We didn't, did we?
We didn't get. The thing was, I felt like I was photobombing. I felt like I was photobombing from the back. Do you know what I mean? No. If you recall, because I was on my way out. You were, and then I was just.
We can make a photo here. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Not quite the same. Not quite the same. We will. No. We had a massive hug first time we met at South Coast Summit in person, and I was hugging everyone. I don't know how I didn't catch COVID. I really don't.
Mate, honestly, it got awkward at one point, because you were coming around for a second one. I was like, mate, we've already done it. Do you know what I mean? We've already done it. You don't need
I wanted more. It's as simple as that. But
so nice. So nice.
But getting back to some of the points you made there, I want to come back and circle on a couple of things. In that, I have experience of exactly what you said, going back a little bit before pandemic times, because historically in the United Kingdom, where I live in the northeast of England, the salaries have not been as good as maybe in the south of England. And that's because cost of living up in the northeast was cheaper, and house prices were cheaper, that sort of thing. And I'd worked for northeast-based organizations most of my career up until about 2016, when I joined a company based down in the south. And with that, I was working remotely from home, as you described, Will. And but I was getting southern-based wages, and this is awesome. I've got all the benefits of a southern salary, but the cost of living in the northeast.
Mm.
But so I think there was hints of that coming early, and that was the best thing that I ever did, breaking out of my sort of northeast bubble, if you like, and going wider. I'm happy that I did that anyway. But then, as you say, when COVID hit, and everyone was forced to start working from home, and we had all the problems of furlough and that sort of thing. Uh, this led into this trend of that we're seeing now of the great resignation, people seeing that there was this talent pool shortage, and they could command higher salaries. And you're absolutely right. The salaries have just exploded. And I think at some point we've got to. I keep saying this. We've got to reach critical mass at some point. Something's got to give. This crest of a wave has got to go down again at some point. But there's no sign of it right now. And the bit that always puzzles me slightly is, why is there that talent shortage, do you think? Why do you think if people in the industry, or maybe talking to their friends who are in other sectors, and they're not particularly happy in what they're doing, are we not seeing more people cross-training and maybe jumping into this and seeing the opportunity in M365 and Azure? Because it still seems like it's the power is all in the employee's hand rather than the employer's. There's a lot that's where it is right now.
I think it's. I think you kind of touched on it there. It's how quickly things change,
Mm,
and I think that for for you, for Femke, for the people who are frequently more community led, you tend to be at the leading edge of the technology
mm,
change, because you're in it. You're talking to people daily about it. You're frequently thought leading. In terms of what should we be looking out for? How is this going to affect us?
Yeah.
But most people work for a company, and they're paid to do a certain thing, and that job is whatever the company needs them to be.
mm,
Whereas you've almost transcended that. You're looking at the technology as a rather than looking at it from through a company lens.
mm,
So a lot of people that I talk to are unhappy because they haven't had any training, for example, or they want training and
Mm.
certifications in something. Now, frequently the most successful people I know are the ones who take control of that themselves and say, actually, I'm not going to wait for an employer to give me that. I'm going to go out and do it myself. And I'm not suggesting everybody should do that, because for a lot of people, they work to live as opposed to, live to work, or the other way around. I can't figure it out right now. But
yeah,
they're sitting
that's
there
right.
and they're saying, okay, actually, I have a family. I'm busy. I want to make good money, have a nice salary, and then off the back of that, I'm going to go and enjoy my weekend. Whereas some of the other people that I know say, actually, on for 2 nights a week, I'm going to put myself through this training course and learn it, and I'll pay for the certification at the end of it. But how often do people sit there and go, right, I'm going to be totally career focused?
Mm,
I'm going to really advance myself. And it's tiring. And also, as well, I mean, we've all got lives. And actually, I don't know about you, but
It's true.
since the pandemic, our lives seem to have got more blurred with work.
mm,
And actually, we're all busier. Things just seem to be getting faster and faster and faster in our private lives as well as at work. So
Yes.
I think the issue with the skills shortage is, I don't think there's one thing that you can say, or that I could say is an issue. I think we've got a lack, certainly in the UK, we've got a lack of people coming up from sort of A level, apprentice, degree level people coming into the industry. I don't think STEM subjects particularly get pushed at an early age, and I think where I was on another podcast, Pete, where you asked a question around
mm.
what's available for people. I think schools are underfunded, and frequently by the time someone gets through their GCSE or whatever equivalent it is. Is that technology still relevant to
Yeah.
what actually an employer might need? I don't know. We've got issues there. I think in terms of diversity, I don't think the IT sector attracts enough diversity of people. It's still very male heavy, and I think that's not through a lack of trying at times, but I think as a on a world level, we need incentives that are going to get people engaged earlier to kind of bring people in and bring them through. But for the majority of people, they're not at that leading edge, and so they're sometimes 2 or 3 iterations behind whatever's just been released because that's the environment that they work in. You've worked, you moved from an end customer type organization into the Microsoft partner space, and as soon as you're in the Microsoft partner space, everything changed because the technology was that much more up to date, vibrant, and there's a bit of a buzz and there's an energy. Whereas if you're sitting in a potentially not particularly exciting environment doing desktop support, is that and you've been doing that for a long time, is there the incentive then there for somebody to try and do that unless something happens in their life that makes them go, well, actually, I want more? I don't know. What do you think? That's me talking a lot. I'm going to drink. It's not whiskey.
It's not whiskey. Yeah. I was thinking just a question what I have about diversity. I don't know if is that okay? I just want to ask.
Yeah.
Thinking about the companies that need more people, but there are so many IT company or tech company I know not open-minded for more diversity. So thinking about younger, older people, or just women, men. You can ages, different things. But are there things that you're seeing in the tech industry that is keeping change now, or just going too slow? Are companies open for it?
I think companies are, definitely. I think
They
there
want but
is.
didn't do it.
No, I don't know. I think so. It's a very difficult question to answer
It is. Yeah.
because each role that we see is challenging to fill as a recruiter,
Of
because
course.
frequently the companies that we tend to recruit for, they're looking for those leading edge type people, and they're looking to buy in that experience so that because they're busy, they've got projects, there's growth, someone's left, whatever it is. It all comes down to how much time does somebody have to bring someone in and then get them to a place where actually
Yes.
they're able to do the job. Now, regardless of age, it could be young, it could be old.
Yes.
If someone is able to do the job, they should be hired regardless. If they're not able to do the job, but they've got the desire to learn and they're motivated to learn, regardless of age, again, maybe there needs to be a sort of a 2-tier process to hiring, which is almost get in the people that we need right now, and then let's put in place a sort of a slower burn kind of hiring process that brings people in. But it all comes down to budget. If you've only got one role and you're looking to hire an Azure architect or whatever it is, you're hiring the Azure architect. You're not, you may not have the scope to do that.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22 situation. You need people with the skill set, but actually, if the people with the skill set don't exist, well, how are you going to get them? So it is it's a very challenging it's a very challenging thing, and I don't have the answers. On my podcast, I was talking to someone who is a big supporter of women in technology, and one of the things that she was saying was that actually getting people who can pivot from something technical into something new, they're doing the same job but maybe in a different area, might then increase the diversity. You know, if you're an architect or a consultant or a developer or whatever, and you're just in a slightly different space, you could pivot into something. You know, you know what the job is. It's just the language is different, or the technology is different. So sometimes that's a good way of sort of
finding
driving
people,
that sort of diversity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Nice.
think regardless of the challenge of getting more diversity into tech, what it I think being in the community, as you said earlier, Will, is a tremendous advantage to you. It's a double-edged sword in so many ways because I'll give you two examples of how this works for me. In that I went on a journey through putting something on LinkedIn. Basically, I took my first Microsoft certification due to encouragement from my manager at the time, not being somebody who had wanted to do exams, but I did it. I passed it, and I started taking more. I got the bug for it, and then on Link, and I, as everybody does when you pass a Microsoft exam, I shared my verified achievement on Credly or Acclaimed or whatever it was on LinkedIn, and not long after that, a publishing company, Pact Publishing, reached out to me in LinkedIn messaging and said, "Hey, Peter, we're seeing you've passed this exam. Congratulations. Would you like to write a book about it?" And I like, what? And like, couldn't believe it. And I thought, no, they can't mean me, surely. But turns out they did. And I said yes. I'd always wanted to write a book, and I've told this story many times. You can see it all over the place. The rest is history. So these opportunities come from putting yourself out there. But the problem I've got now in that saying of "you live to work, you don't work to live," is that I got, and still am, so passionate about community first, which happens to tie into my career, what I do. So I'm really lucky. I think we are all really lucky in this community that we are so passionate about what we do, is that I've got to a point where I say often, most of the time really, I don't know how to switch off. I'm not very good at shutting it off. And I find myself on a weekend, if I've got nothing to do, and my wife is great at getting, well, there's plenty to do in the house, Peter. I don't really want to do all that, but if I'm sitting there
If
and
there's
I've not
nothing
got
to do that I want to do,
yeah, there's nothing
I
to do
think
that I
that's
want to do.
That's it.
Exactly. If I've not got on a Saturday, if I get bored, I'll start writing a chapter for the book, or I'll look at, and I don't know if that's healthy all the time. I certainly don't have the right balance. I'm working on it. I really am. The other Sunday, I made myself not look at technology all day, and I was grumpy as heck. I was just unhappy. I couldn't settle to anything. I tried watching stuff on Netflix and whatnot. Other streaming services are available, and I just couldn't settle to anything. But the next day, on the Monday, when I went in, I felt more refreshed than I had in months. So it obviously does make a difference. So yeah.
it's so I get a similar thing, and obviously I'm not as engaged in the technology, but I find that my job is stressful. It's sales driven,
It
and
is.
when you run your own business as well, as I'm learning, having people with salaries is, you sit there and you go, crikey, this isn't just me sitting in my bedroom anymore, sorry, my home office, anymore. It's now, we have a business, and that's tiring and stressful. And I just get burnt out. I find that I get to a point where I don't want to be present on LinkedIn. I don't want to be on Twitter particularly. And actually, I think my Twitter contributions have now shifted entirely to food related things. There's very little actual work stuff in there, and so I put up photos of food and what I'm doing, and I get people attacking me because they don't like rare steak. And that's fine. There's a number of well documented cases where people have said I'd rather have dry and dusty beef than a beautiful, well cooked piece of. Anyway, she knows who she is. No doubt I'm going to get a message later, but I agree. But burnout is a real thing, and I think that it's for everybody. Like my wife works in a school, and she's like part of the safeguarding function, and so she's dealing with really challenging situations every day around self-harm and potential suicide and all this kind of stuff. And so she gets to the point where she goes, I just need a break. And the school gives holidays, thank God, lots of holidays, so she gets a chance to kind of take the sort of the edge off, and actually take a step back and not do anything. But I totally agree, mate, because if all you're doing, I think you can reach a point where you're passionate about something, and especially when you're creating stuff. I don't know how you feel about that, but when you're creating something, it takes
Yeah.
it out of you more than and
does.
so if you're doing that a lot, and and that's what people expect.
It is.
There's a number of people in the community that I've spoken to at various points who've just gone, I just need to take a month off and take a step back and just go, actually, this is, I don't owe anybody else anything. It's time to put myself forwards. And that's hard because that takes a level of confidence as well, when actually you're used to living in the sort of the limelight a little bit, being able to actually take that step back and go, actually, I'm not going to do anything for a few weeks. Because obviously, especially if you're an MVP, it's all about, what's your contributions to the community? Well, my contribution currently is that I'm going to take a break, and it's like, where's what happened that month? I don't know. I'm not an MVP. I don't have to worry about it. So yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand you, Peter. I think I have the same. I'm always, when there are new things that I'm thinking about, I need to make something about it. So make a blog post or need to share something about this because it's new, and tomorrow there are so many other people already sharing something. So it's now time to do something.
Yeah.
And that's what I have. I need to be one of the first to share.
You do feel that pressure, don't you?
I have
you think,
that. Yeah.
I've got to get it out there before somebody maybe thinks, oh, they've just copied my articles.
Yes,
that sort of thing.
That idea, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as somebody who is, I mean, I describe you, Femke, as one of the rising stars of our wonderful community, and you are. You just you've been all over the place lately, and you've done such wonderful things, which is why we wanted you to be part of our team on this show. But I wonder if you are already feeling that sort of balance strain of fitting it all in and getting that balance between. I mean, you've got two wonderful children and a home life and a family. How are you finding it yourself? I've turned you into the guest.
Sometimes, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, but I want to know as well now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, sometimes it's hard, but I think it's fine. Yeah, I put my phone sometimes away and don't try to look at that, and find a structure or something like that. So 1 or 2 or maybe 3 evenings in the week that I do some community stuff, and then try to don't have the other evenings. So just chill, relax, and put my phone away. That's what I'm trying, but not always working. But I'm trying. Yeah.
Do you find exercise works? Do you do exercise and stuff like that? I know, I know we're talking about people in technology, guys. It's not, exercise isn't the first thing that we really think about, is it? I'm talking about myself here as well. But I find that to kind of de-stress, so I go for a walk in the morning and a walk in the evening.
I do that also, and also go to the gym or something like that. But then also looking at webinars or trainings, or then it's also don't put the music on. Just
all I do is go for
walks
in
the car. Always.
I love going for walks, and I feel better when I do it, but I don't make myself do it enough. And I think the time of year makes a big difference as well. Over the spring and summer months, and even in autumn, it was far more appealing to do so. But in these cold, dark winter months, it's less so. But I went out for a walk the other day, and it just made me feel better.
Do you know what my favourite thing to do is at this time of year? So I walk the dog at night, and we walk on average. I'll do between 3 and 4 miles a day with the dog, and and at night we go out in the woods, and it's dark, but I don't take a torch, and I just literally walk in the dark with the dog. The dog's got like an LED collar, so I can see him. He looks like a blooming Jedi in the distance running around with his flashy collar on. But but
It's good to
I
have a
like,
dog.
but
You
I
need to
like
go
going out and
out.
walking and doing stuff like that, because actually, what's really interesting is you get out and it's pitch black. But in about 10 minutes, you start being able to see stuff. And then by the time I get back to the car, if the moon's out, it's almost like daylight. It's incredible. And it's something which we started doing during the pandemic as a family, was actually just going out and walking, just to get out of the house. This is before we had a dog.
Yeah.
But actually, I find that as a de-stressor, now if I don't do that, then I find that I find things more and more difficult, which is kind of bizarre because I never thought I'd be that person. But yeah, that's kind of it certainly helps me.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice.
It's well-being is so important, isn't it? And a lot of organizations are very much focused on well-being now, and will have well-being tools and processes incorporated into their. I mean, like Viva
We need to do it.
Insights as well. Yeah, and
we're
talked
talking
to
about it, but we need to do it.
exactly. I talked to Kevin McDonald a lot about this. Who you were on the Grey Hat Beard Princess, our good friends over at our sister podcast, if you like. And Kevin and I talk often about the fact that at the end of the day, that virtual commute, we started doing it, good intentions. This is great. This is so good for my well-being. It makes me think. It makes me stop and think and whatnot. But after a while, we just got out of the habit. And habits are hard to sustain sometimes, aren't they? But when you do them, they do actually make a difference.
Yep.
It is. And it's also when you do nothing, you just thinking about new things, and that's always learn one even more. Get creative. And
I want to swing back to the technology though for a little while, if I may, though, and talking about the wonderful world that we all live in, all three of us, in some way, shape, or form, of Microsoft 365, of Azure. Within that umbrella, where would you say the biggest and most real opportunities are at the moment, especially if you're considering getting into this industry? Is it in Azure? Is it things like Azure AI or Internet of Things, or is it M365 cybersecurity? Is it Viva? Is it Power Automate? Where are you seeing the most traction right now?
That's a hell of a question, Peter. I'm not going to lie. There's many facets and layers to that. I think
so many different people.
Yeah. So I think if you're looking for a quick and simple way into technology for a non-technical person, Power Apps, Power Platform seems to be a very low code, no code type thing. Seems to be a very straightforward way for people to get into it, and it's very accessible. You compare that with developers, sort of more traditional developers, you've got to do a lot to learn the language and understand what's going on. Whereas actually, it's much more straightforward on the Power App side. So that's a really interesting entry point, which we, prior to 4 or 5 years ago, just never saw. Whereas now, actually, we're seeing people coming through on that route and then becoming more technical as they go, as they understand the sort of the ecosystem. In terms of growth areas, information security and compliance is, from a Microsoft perspective, I think is going to be big next year. There's a number of companies that I'm aware of who are throwing a lot of their sort of plans around sales and development into that area. Just I think as well, Microsoft is starting to push it more aggressively as part of their overall sort of plan. But everything is kind of in demand at the moment. So, if you look at Azure, so everything from the sort of the infrastructure through platform piece is, we're seeing a shortage of people for and demand for. We don't tend to touch on the data side of things particularly, just because it gets a little bit. We're a small company. There's only so much that we can do. But from a data perspective as well, I'm aware that there are, there's quite a lot going on in that space. Modern work is always busy. Migrations from on-prem into online is in demand. We've seen, although we have seen a real drop off on the Microsoft Voice side, so Teams particularly.
It's interesting.
Used to be an area that we did a huge amount, that I used to do personally a huge amount with. But I was talking to someone yesterday. I can count on two hands the number of pure Teams roles that I've had, over the last 12 months. That's here in the UK, obviously. And that's down to a couple of things. I think massive amount of hiring through 2020 into 2021 from a Teams voice perspective. Lots of organisations were quick to switch across to Teams because it was such a simple way of sort of collaborating during all the lockdowns. And that sort of drove the first almost firefighting wave. And then organizations started saying, all right, well, we've got it now. How do we make it work properly? And again, that then has driven hiring to do that. But we've got less than a dozen companies in the UK that actually really do it well, and who've got a weight of sort of skills and talent in house. And so people are kind of shuffling from one company to another, and but there isn't that large demand, and I don't know whether that's going to change or not. My gut says that if you're a voice person, you should probably start learning something else.
Interesting.
Because I don't see the demand for it. But then I was wrong about Skype for Business. I was sitting there telling people, "Go, Skype for Business is dying," But then I didn't foresee the pandemic coming, bizarrely.
Wow.
So yeah. But then that in itself was an event which changed office culture and consolidated it, and accelerated that uptake by about 5 to 10 years. And so that's what drove the uptake of Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
But if I'm really not seeing that many companies that have got much demand for it at the moment, which is a real shame.
It is a shame, and also in that space, certainly from a community point of view, well-known figures in that space, there's not a massive amount of them. I'll not name anyone specific for fear of leaving someone out, but I immediately think of, probably on one hand, the big names in the UK certainly in that space. So
there's probably about 10 people across.
Is there?
But who've been sort of who've been doing it for a long time. I think I'm not saying it's dying. I'm saying that from a hiring perspective, we're not seeing growth.
Yeah,
and that's the bit where I start going, okay, if we're not seeing growth, and voice people are paid very well because it's very niche.
It is.
Is it time to start considering, cross training into something just perhaps a little bit more mainstream, so that if there is a downturn in that particular technology, these people aren't left sort of high and dry. We saw it with Cisco. 20 years ago. Back in 99, 2000, the Cisco CCIEs were earning 70, 80 grand a year, and and Cisco, there was a wave of uptake of Cisco's technology, and it just dropped off in 2002. And there was people who previously been earning sort of 80, 90 grand a year who were struggling to get sort of 30 or 40 grand a year because there was no demand for the skill set. And to be fair, I'm not sure that Cisco's properly ever really reached back to that level again. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm seeing things at the moment. There's demand all round generally, but it tends to be driven, I think, by perhaps that more 365. As if it's not cloud, we're not seeing it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm surprised a little that the on-premises to cloud is still going as strongly as it is. After all these years, there are still people who haven't made the journey, especially hybrid migrations for Exchange to Exchange Online. I mean, tenant to tenant migrations are always going to happen with mergers and divestiges and whatnot, but the hybrids just keep on going, and once in a blue moon, you still see the occasional Exchange 2003 server in the wild, which is really scary. But anyway, I'm conscious of time. We are all very, very busy people, and so we'll start to wind things up. But before we do, Will, would you like to share anything, any final thoughts, how people can reach you if they want to get in touch and make use of your wonderful services, which I can personally vouch for? You are a true professional, a really great guy, a really good friend, and if you're in the position where you need to be looking for your next career move, this man can help you. So how did they find you?
Thank you, mate. That's very kind of you to say. And obviously, I think I owe you quite a lot of money for that. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can get me on will@ms-talent.com, or you can get me on Twitter on my Twitter handle, I said there, which is @msftrecruit. So yeah, you can get me in all of those ways. Yes, feel free to drop me a line or drop me an email.
Right.
Amazing. It's been a true pleasure to have you on the show, Will. It really has. It's always good to catch up with you. We must have a proper catch up anyway. We will do that.
Yes.
And have a proper good old natter.
No, we don't need another hug, Pete. Jeez, my
God. But Femke, thank you so much. Always great to talk to you as well. So, somebody just very colourful has walked behind you in an orange jumper. But, there she goes again.
Orange.
Orange for the Netherlands. But we will wind it up. Thank you all to our wonderful listeners and viewers for watching. You can find us on Twitter at CloudCon365, on YouTube at youtube.com/c/cloudconversations, and we ain't hard to find on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatnot. So thank you all. We'll see you on the next episode of Cloud Conversations. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.